think for me, it's really understanding what the client needs and then applying the right technology to deliver the right service. So if you take the examples of residential conveyancing and understanding what a client really wants to make their life easier, things like entering your information straight into a system digitally once rather than on paper 3 separate times. As a client, I would much prefer that. And then when you look internally, that would really speed up the processes of client engagement, know your client, some of the governance around setting a client up. That's the kind of thing that I think you really need to just get back to the basics and get that right, which, that comes under innovation, that comes under all of the different technologies you're looking at, process automation. It's just how you phrase it. So this is about understanding what the client needs and a language that you can speak to the lawyers in that they understand, and then really starting to drive that digital transformation that way. Yeah, that's the great question, actually, particularly around the language. So we had a recent example where we were working with our private wealth team, and they have very different types of client engagement letters. So I could go to that lawyer, and actually did the first time, and said, I'd really like to understand your client engagement business process and really look at that process end to end and re-engineer that process to be as efficient as possible. And he looked slightly blankly at me and kind of rolled his eyes and really wanted to get out of the room. And then I went back to him and said, so your client engagement letter is quite cumbersome at the moment. You have various different versions of that letter. If I could set it up for you so that you just put in the key information at the beginning and it pre-populates the letter for you and gives you the version that you're after with one click, how would that work for you? Which he was delighted and wanted that done immediately. So I've asked the same question, but in a very different way. And actually then he's very engaged and wants to work with me to give him that output, so that really he doesn't have to sit and work through 7 different versions of the letter and work out which one he wants. He can just tick the right boxes and get the response. So that's the kind of way you speak or try to talk to them about their process and the way they work. Yeah, it's hugely important. It's got to be led from the top down, really. But I guess that's a different conversation again. So that's talking about the returns and why you would do something. So aligning this kind of either digital transformation or business process re-engineering to the business strategy and what we're trying to achieve. Particularly, we are really focused on value for the clients and exceptional service delivery. So if we can show that by working on these business processes or by how we engage with our clients, we are improving that service delivery. That's very much speaking the board's level language. And of course, it's all about profit. So if we can increase our efficiency, we can increase our profit. I think for me, that's very much about taking on a small part of the business or a specific process at a time, so that you can engage the right people at the right levels and engage the risk teams and the technology teams and the external providers to make sure that you are tackling all of those bits at the same time. So if you're either tackling, say, a particular business process that goes across all of the divisions, then you're engaging the risk and compliance teams at the same time and checking every different step along that process. Or if you're going down and working with a particular team, you're again looking at every step in that process. And if you're going between different roles within that team, you're able to make sure that you engage each role and each step along that role to make sure nothing's missed between that. If, in my mind, when it's digital, it's easier to put checks and balances in. Particularly when it's paper-based moving around, that tends to be much more reliant on the individuals checking and doing what they need to do. When it's digital, you can see where it's ending up much more easily, I think. It's a really interesting question. See, for me, particularly at the moment, I would say critically, it's being able to work with people and build relationships. So actually getting people in the right place to adopt the technology or drive the technology or understand what the business needs is probably what I spend the majority of my time doing. And I think that's essential. I also think having an understanding of business is probably more important than having an understanding of technology, because actually if you understand what the business needs and you have enough of an understanding as to who the technology providers are and what the technologies out there do, then you can engage with the right people to help you achieve that. So I'm not sure. I mean, I was a techie, so I've come from that background, but actually I'm not sure that's essential. I haven't logged onto a server for many years, and I'm just not sure that's something you'd need these days. I think the industry, I think the world is doing a lot more than it used to do, but I think there'll always be more that we can do on the equality, diversity, full stop. There are groups within the legal technology sector, particularly there's the groups Women IT that are doing a lot. I think it probably needs to go back to school level actually to do a lot of work at that level to encourage people in. But I think it does need more focus. I'm not sure I'm a fan necessarily of quotas particularly, but actually targets and just trying to encourage people into the right roles, women into the right roles, and then work together and understand what different people's skill sets are and encourage those, I think is really important. So although it is being talked about, it's definitely on the agenda, it just needs a bit more focus. I think that's really important. I can really only speak from the experience at Cripps, but our current managing partner is passionate about modernisation, and you can really see that that's the way the firm is moving. We've been on a programme of change for the last 5 years, and we will be for the foreseeable future. And actually, you can see that align across the whole firm. And changing cultures, changing anything, actually has to be, I think, led from the top, and everyone has to believe in it and know where they're going and why they're going there, to then change things at a grassroots level. So I do think that's really important. I think people need to understand why, what that means to them, what that means to them today and tomorrow, and probably the day after that as well. So when it comes to just practical digital transformation and you start to have those conversations, the seed has already been planted. They know we're already on a journey. And okay, that might be specifically what that means to them today, but they are more open to the idea as you work through. I think one and the same. I'm less sure about within 5 years anyway, managing partners coding, but our managing partner now has an understanding of technology, and I just think that's going to get more and more important. We were at a recent board meeting, weren't we? And actually the subject of technology was most of the evening, and yet I was the only technology role in the room. Everyone else was managing partners, and almost everything they were talking about is how technology affects what they're doing today, and that's today. So in 5 years' time, I think that will be even more so. But I think you have to have the right strategy in the first place, and then you apply the right technology to that. So I do think there's a bit of both. I think business has to come first. I think being really clear where you're going, why you're going there, and what that's going to look like. So I think, fundamentally, whoever at whatever level, those questions you have to answer. So, I've heard various models, but understanding where you are today is important. But where are you going to go? As much as you can say, what will that look like? But what will that mean to the person that your person or business or team that you're changing? What will that look like, and what will that feel like for them? Because I think that's the barrier. When people don't know that and they're worried about that can be a real challenge. I think there's a lot of collaboration. I think, certainly in the mid-tier market, there's a lot of heads of IT, CIOs, IT directors. We all know each other, we network a lot. Whether that's, historically that's meant a lot of people have done the same thing. So, as a technology supplier, sure, they'd be the first to tell you, once you're into the legal market, it's really easy to sell to other law firms. Getting in is incredibly difficult, which means, and I guess there's only certain technology out there that is written for law firms, but actually that's meant we've followed each other quite a lot. Whereas now there's so many startups doing so many different things that's quite difficult to keep on top of, whilst trying to do something differently, have a competitive edge, have that advantage. So I think that's where there is a difference now. It's definitely changing. I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is yet.
So does the industry need to do more to learn from other industries, perhaps?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think again, as an industry, we are starting to look to other industries and learn from them. But then that's where collaborating within the legal industry is not necessarily the advantage. But there are a lot of innovative, as I say, tech startups and tech companies and law tech networking opportunities out there that we are starting to get more involved with. Legal Geek is a really good example of that. But it feels like the beginning of that journey. I think firms are approaching it in different ways. So some of the really big firms are setting up a completely different entity, different business almost, to try new services, new solutions through innovative means or tech startups, incubators, all kinds of things to try something where it doesn't affect their main, day-to-day legal business. Other firms, so we have we call it the Imaginarium. We have an internal group that spend time looking at different solutions or different startups or different ways of working, but very separately, and it doesn't affect their day-to-day work so much, but does cover across the entire business, so people can imagine a different way of doing things or a better future. So I think there are lots of ways that people are approaching this, and most firms are doing something in that sphere.